These are We the People News, y'all. Alright, so I'm not an attorney. Everything that I say is just opinion based, and don't take it as me being an attorney, because I am not. Alright? Always look straight forward, or never look straight forward. Always look around you, and that's what I do to be able to benefit me. Alright? And trying to squeeze this in here just right. Okay. This is going to be a little bit messed up on a video, but it is what it is. So, this is just a learning video, alright? So just take it with a grain of salt, okay?
Today I want to look at law versus statutes and codes. Why? Well, we keep getting a lot of comments dropped down in our comment section that's like, hey yo, test of freedom, don't you know the law applies to everybody? Well, I'll go ahead and say, yeah, it does. It just depends on what law are you talking about. Because see, last time I checked, we live in America, you know, land of the free, home of the brave. Yet it seems like we've been transported into some kind of weird twilight zone where it's statutes and codes that rule the land and rule over us. So, let's check it out.
What makes a king out of a slave? Courage.
Just the freedom, just the freedom. You can't just the freedom, just the freedom. You can't test me, cause I'm free. Just the freedom, just the freedom. You can't test me, cause I'm free. Just the freedom, just the freedom, just the freedom.
This video does not constitute legal advice. It is up to you to do your own research to apply the information to your own specific situation. Our videos are for educational and entertainment purposes only. Okay, so for all the government bootlickers out there that seem to be having a hard time understanding what the law is, this video may not make a whole lot of sense to you, because you seem to believe that statutes, codes, rules, and regulations brought forth by the state are actual laws. You must remember that America is a common law nation, not a code and statute nation. And for an actual law to have been broken, someone, another living man or woman, had to have caused harm, injury, or loss to another living man or woman. See, you and I, as Americans on this landmass, have but one actual law we must abide by. And that law is, do no harm. Why? America, much like Canada, England, UK, Australia, and a few other commonwealths, are all common law nations. And common law is unwritten law. Why? Because it is so absolutely fucking simple, it doesn't need to be written. Do no harm. It is what is common among us. We don't need someone to write a specific statute to tell us not to rob, steal, murder, rape, harm, and not to destroy our fellow man or woman's property. See, the Constitution and Bill of Rights are not laws for you and I. They are laws that restrain the people elected into office.
And the country she named is true.
Congressmen,
However,
senators,
just like our country, civil law
government employees
invaded our freedom.
They take an oath of office swearing to uphold and defend it, and to protect and secure the rights and property of the men and women who put them in office.
But not the
Period.
correct oath of office.
Now, just because I live in a certain area does not compel me to perform, to abide by restrictive codes and statutes without fair and just compensation. Because, Amendment 13 says slavery and involuntary servitude are against the law on American soil. So no matter where you go on this landmass known as America, there is but one law you must always abide by. And what is that law? Do no harm. All those codes and statutes or restrictions on government employees to abide by while they're on the clock at their government job, because they have signed into an employment contract and are being compensated to abide by those restrictive rules, codes, regulations, and statutes while they are on our clock. When they clock out, they get to enjoy their inherent rights again and have to abide by one law, which is what, everybody? Do no harm. You can do anything your little heart desires here in America, as long as you're not harming your fellow man or his property. Look at it this way. Did you sign into a contract that specifically states that you will abide by these restrictive statutes and codes and rules and regulations? For law to be good law, it must be expressly written, not implied. An implied contract is nothing more than a presumption. Can you find a code, rule, regulation, or statute anywhere in your state statutes or in U.S. codes that has your name expressly written within that code? All codes, rules, regulations, and statutes use words like individual or person, but they will never use the words man or woman. They do this to be ambiguous and deceitful because, of course, you're a person, right? So, you're not exactly a person. See, they created those words to use in their codes to identify their internal employees, which you and I are not. That nasty word person is code for city, state, and federal government employees. When those government employees are on the clock, they are considered persons or individuals. And when they clock out, they are once again a man or a woman. And they are no longer contractually obligated to abide by those codes. These people, the government, use these words to trick you into believing those codes and statutes apply to you. And if you don't know the con, they most certainly do. But they're not going to tell you about it. Because remember, ignorance of the law is no excuse. So unless you are one of their government employees, none of these codes and statutes apply to you because you're not being compensated to abide by restrictive statutes. And you're not being compensated to give up your rights for duties and obligations. Okay, I'm sure if you went and looked at your state code for the general jurisdiction of magistrate courts, you'd probably see something similar to what we're going to look at here for the Georgia State Code. Now, the reason I'm bringing up magistrate courts is because they're the ones that supposedly have jurisdiction over county ordinances and penal ordinances, right? Anytime there's a code violation, that is where you would have to make a special appearance, is at the magistrate court for that supposed county ordinance or penal ordinance violation, right? Okay, so here we are, Georgia Code, Title 15, Chapter 10, Magistrate Courts, Article 1, General Provisions. This is the section, General Jurisdiction. If we look right down here at number 4, the trial of charges of violations of county ordinances and penal ordinances of state authorities. Alright, so when I read over this, the first thing that popped into my head is, what is a state authority, right? So let's go and see. I'm at Law Insider, state authority definition. State authority means an authority that is a state elected official, agency, board, commission, committee, council, department, or public body, corporate, and politic, created by constitution, statute, rule, or order, a state government or quasi-governmental corporation, the Supreme Court or Court of Appeals or the Assembly or Senate. Okay, so according to that definition, are you, as a man or woman, a state authority? So then why are they pulling men and women into the magistrate court over county ordinances of state authorities? Because see, what I'm having a hard time with is how they can pull a free man or a free woman into their kangaroo court to issue you a violation to extort money from you because, I don't know, your grass is too high, your trash can's in the incorrect place, you've parked your car in your yard, or a neighbor has called to report you because, I don't know, they think you have too much stuff in your yard, or they don't like the types of animals you have in your yard, or because your dog is barking, or because you're playing your music too loud, or because you're shooting off fireworks, whatever it is, right? So if they can only hear a trial for charges of violations of county ordinances and penal ordinances of state authorities, then how are they passing that off onto you to extort money from you? See how it doesn't make any sense? Because what they're doing is unlawful. They have no justification nor jurisdiction to charge you with any ordinance violation, any statute violation, any penal ordinance violation, because they do not apply to you. They apply to government employees, which are what? State authorities. Just to give an example, because here at Test of Freedom, we believe in all of our freedoms. But the one that we choose to exercise is the Second Amendment, our unalienable right to keep and bear arms. So if you've never been taught the difference between statutes and the actual law, then you've been led to believe that these statutes that states pass apply to you. Now, there is a huge difference between statutes and the actual law and who they actually apply to. We've went over it just a little bit ago, who they apply to, but if the government wants to coerce you into abiding by restrictive firearms codes and statutes, then they need to hand you an employment contract and put you on their government payroll. So if the government wants to coerce you into abiding by restrictive codes and statutes, then they need to hand you an employment contract and put you on the government payroll prior to you abiding by those restrictive codes and statutes. Why? Because, again, I'm going to say it. Slavery and involuntary servitude are against the law on American soil. Alright, so let's go ahead and talk this out, because I honestly think a lot of us need to become born-again free Americans that are free of tyranny. So we've all been lied to by the government about your right to bear arms.
Surprise,
and
surprise.
Firearms statutes that really only apply to government employees who are on the government clock. Employees that we as taxpayers are paying to abide by those restrictive firearms statutes while serving us. So let's learn the difference between statutes and actual law. According to their code, you're not supposed to have certain weapons unless first you have received permission from them, right? So here's what they say. Title II of the Gun Control Act of 1968 is a revision of the National Firearms Act of 1934 and pertains to machine guns, short or sawed-off shotguns, and rifles, and so-called destructive devices. Acquisition of these weapons is subject to prior approval of the Attorney General, and federal registration is required for possession. Generally, a $200 tax is imposed upon each transfer or making of any Title II weapon. Now, let me ask you this. Do you see your name written anywhere in that stack of worthless horseshit? For law to be good law, it must be expressly written, not implied. For that law to actually apply to you, it would have to include your name, or you would have to have signed into an employment contract with the federal government and be receiving compensation, which would contractually obligate you to abide by that horseshit
Anytime it
code.
brings
Are
up
you
guns or
getting
shows
your
pictures of guns, I'm
government
blocking
check?
it
So that,
because
my friends, is
you know
not
who.
an actual law. It is an act of Congress. that only applies to the President, the Congress, Senate, and all other government employees while they are on the clock performing their duties and obligations to the American people. So yeah, you may own, possess, buy, sell, trade, give away, loan your non-registered or registered automatic weapon or any weapon, suppressor, and any firearms accessory you please without having to pay a $200 extortion fee, and without having to purchase a special license or asking the government for permission. But you were never supposed to figure that out because this is how they control society and make billions of dollars through licensing, taxes, and other fees. The only reason you're registering your property, which in this case would be weapons, with the state is because government's only job is to secure and protect the rights and property of man. If that weapon, your property, were to get stolen, they'd have the serial numbers on file to recognize should it turn up in a pawn shop somewhere or a local gun show. They would notify you they have found your property, as they should, and would return the property to you, its rightful owner. So you gotta remember, government employees have duties and obligations while they are on the clock, but you and I have rights. One of those rights is our right to own property without that property being subjected to government oversight, rules, and regulations. Government is there to protect and secure your rights, property, and freedom, not tax them and regulate them as you've been led to believe. When you're dealing with government agents and agencies they work for, there's several words you should familiarize yourself with, and two of those words are property and compensation. So, that automatic weapon is your property. Government cannot control another man's property, but they attempt it. And they do get away with it more often than not by labeling your property as a word they've used or created within their own codes and statutes, such as rifle, pistol, handgun, shotgun, weapon, suppressor. You will never see them use that pesky word, property, within their codes and statutes to describe your property, because they have zero control over your property. Therefore, anytime you are dealing with government or courts, you always refer to the object as your property. Also, I think we all need to learn the difference between illegal and unlawful, because there is a very big difference. Illegal is a statutory word they use within their codes that means it's against corporate policy, and it only applies to the government employees. Unlawful, on the other hand, means that you have violated the one law that you are supposed to abide by, which means do no harm. So if you have done something unlawful, you have harmed your fellow man or woman or their property. If they're trying to tell you that you have done something illegal, it means that you have broken one of their codes or statutes or policies that, remember, do not apply to you in the first damn place. So when the government tries to tell you you have done something illegal and they try to issue you a citation or a ticket for a statute or a code or a rule that you have broken, they're presuming you are an employee that is or is not following the rules of their corporate structure. So again, I'm going to reiterate, the statutes found in the U.S. codes or in any state statutes, your state codes, do not apply to the average American who is not on the government payroll. Those statutes apply to them, not you and I. But those who thirst for power in positions of government would rather you not know this, because if you did, they would no longer be able to control you, your actions, and your property with their never-ending book of magical rules, codes, regulations, and statutes. Think about it. There is zero reference to United States codes or even state codes anywhere in the Constitution or the Bill of Rights. And there's a reason for this. U.S. codes are not law. State codes are not law. They are internal corporate statutes that only apply to the employees of the corporation known as the United States or the corporation known as the state of Georgia or the state of Tennessee, state of Alabama, Okay, you get my meaning. You can look up each corporation's code on Duns and Bradford's website. I'll leave a link down there in the description for that website, as well as a document that shows the corporate codes for each state. I actually went to this website and looked up the corporate code for my own county and city, and it's right there. They're corporations. Anyway, that's a video for a whole nother day. So yeah, I mean, we've all been hoodwinked into believing that this corporation's internal rules, codes, regulations, and statutes actually apply to us. But they don't. We keep abiding by their internal statutes because we've never been taught the difference. And it's working out very well in their favor, to say the least. Since we keep abiding by their restrictive statutes that are only meant for government employees, they just keep adding more and more and more until eventually they will be the only ones with rights, or shall we say guns, while you and I are left with nothing more than sticks and stones and distant memories of our once acknowledged rights and freedom. So basically, they've pulled the old switcheroo on us. They're enjoying the rights of the people while restricting the people with internal corporate statutes that only apply to them. This is how they are controlling society instead of serving society. But the con is being exposed by the people who know the law and know the difference between internal corporate statutes and actual rights of men and women. Okay, everybody, this information is taking a tad bit longer than I anticipated to share, so I'm going to cut this section off right here. Please be on the lookout for part 2. If all of my fellow patriots could take the time to absorb this knowledge and share any ideas that you have down in the comment section, that would be amazing. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And as always, I do hope that each and every one of you has a very blessed day.
Just the freedom, just the freedom. You can't test me. Just the freedom, just the freedom. You can't test me, 'cause I'm free. Just the freedom, just the freedom. You can't test me, 'cause
Okay, y'all. So the only thing I really technically disagree of, I guess there's two things. All right. Number one, she says they took the oath of office, but they really, truly have not. And I discussed it on several videos, the Article 6 and the Article 2, that they must fill out the oath of office with their full legal birth name, the whole name, or it's no good. And it cannot have "so help me God," or it's no good. Okay? And if that's not no good, then all the other oaths are no longer any good. They're voided. You must take the Article 6 and the Article 2. Article 2 is for the president, by the way. But the Article 6 is pretty much everybody else. Judges, your electric county the sheriffs, the governor, and all that. Okay? So if they don't take that correct oath of office, but they do have an oath of office, well, it's void, because they never took the main one, the real Constitution oath of office. Okay? Number 2, the Constitution is for the United States, not the United States of America. Now, again, there's United States small, United States big. Big is a corporation, small is supposed to be for the government. Okay? Alright, so the United States America belongs to King George, because the Paris Treaty Accord was never completed. It's void. And I think, and I may be wrong on this, it's only my opinion, but they created the United States without America in there because it gave it two different jurisdictions. All right? So, since people didn't mind being slaves, they can go into the United States of America, King George jurisdiction, or you can stay in the United States, which you have the Constitution and what we have written today. Now, history lesson. our Constitution came from England. 700 years of trial and error between the people and the kings to live together in peace. Okay? And when it was said and done with, the Constitution we have is just a straight line base of what the government cannot do over the history and the sacrifice of England's people. Okay? Now they go by different little names and all that, but the fact still remains. Okay? The fact still remains. The treaty was never really fully implemented because it was void. Because, number one, the troops were supposed to leave right away. Okay? They stayed 6 years too long. That destroyed the treaty just by itself. Alright? 2, wink wink, our country was supposed to pay back King George, which we have not done even to this day. Okay? Mainly, nobody teaches this, but because we actually borrow money from King George that we was in war with. Yeah, okay. I don't care who you are. That right there is just ridiculously funny and oh my goodness. Okay? But we are where we are today. Okay? So I disagree with her on the Constitution of the United States of America because it does not say that. Now, 1871, Constitution of the United States, and the original Constitution is Constitution for the United States. I've said this in the past, but I'm going to remind it again, just in case we have new people enter into my videos. Alright? With codes and statutes, everything's by presumptions, and you got to really challenge them really hard on facts. Okay? Presumptions, everybody's just plain out guilty with presumptions. Okay? And which is the reason why innocent people go to prison. Alright? Because they don't never really go by the facts. But you want to challenge the facts on the record, so it's on the record. If they cannot prove facts on the record, then it's easier to have the case dismissed, even in civil codes and law, codes and statutes and all that. Because it's still going to be on record, and if anybody else sees it, then they're going to go, what the heck? And how is this possible? Alright, anything else? But again, most of the things she's saying is 100% accurate. Now, we go with codes and statutes. The one thing she did not bring up, again, we're still under martial law. And we're under the third one, which is called martial law rule, which I call martial law 3. Okay? Because it's the third one down. I just call it martial law rule 3 just because it's actually third one down, but it's really just called martial law rule. Alright? And as long as there is no peace treaty between the North and South, we're still in martial law. Okay? And you cannot have a peace treaty with the threat of gun at your head, which is what happened in the 14th Amendment. That's the reason why it's really illegal of the 14th Amendment, because it was threatened by force. Okay? And that is actually the main reason why. Number 2 is actually unconstitutional because it contradicts the rest of the Constitution. Now, they can legally ratify it and add to the Constitution, but it has to go within the guidelines of the first 10. Okay? It cannot contradict the first 10. You know, the 27th Amendment to be able to get rid of the president, right? Well, that was okay. That was legally ratified because it wasn't against the Constitution. You know, the first 10. All right? Number 12. You know, the voting deal. Well, it was more specific. So it wasn't contradictory in the first 10, but it defined that the president and the vice president has to be voted in 2 different tickets. So constitutionally speaking, on the 12th Amendment, the president cannot pick his vice president. And that started with FDR. And if you watch my other video right before this one, well, FDR is the one that really screwed up our country when he filed out bankruptcy. But we were still under martial law and all that kind of stuff, so it didn't really matter a whole lot on filing bankruptcy because, well, we was under military control. Look at the flags in the courtroom. Alright? This will be the People News. I think I covered everything. Till next time. Bye, y'all. Whoop, whoop, whoop.